Oh, all right.
All
That's a nice
right.
little sound. And hi everyone. Are you guys ready to get started? Is that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All righty. So hi. Welcome all to another McNally Jackson virtual event. These started off from necessity during the pandemic when we still wanted authors to get the word out about their books. And then we realized that it's a great way to connect authors who are all over the globe and to hear them talk to each other about various books. So we're doing currently both in-person and online events. This is one of our online events. And you can check our McNally Jackson events page on the website to see any of the future upcoming events. We do some read-throughs, we do some open mics. So digital has been, we've been expanding our digital events quite rapidly. So give it a look. Today, I am proud to welcome both Jean Thompson and Dan Chaon for the release of Jean Thompson's The Poet's House in conversation with Dan Chaon. And I jumped on this event. Oh, there it is. Oh my gosh. In all its glory. Oh, and I see, wow, I wish I could hold it up. I'll get another copy and put it as my background. And then I see Wendy is also.
No, I like your background. I'll just do this.
Oh, perfect. But I jumped on this event because I loved the title. I loved both of it. And I also am a poet myself, to which Jean was like, oh goodness, you're gonna not like, but I actually did. I can't wait to read it myself. I have a galley that I just ordered, so I'm excited. But we are here to launch The Poet's House, which is an unforgettable, lighthearted story about a young woman who discovers the insular world of writers. And I am so excited to launch this. Jean Thompson, as y'all know, is an author of 14 books of fiction, including the National Book Award finalist for Who Do You Love, the New York Times bestseller for The Year We Left Home, and the New York Times notable book, oh my goodness, and the fire trucks are cheering you on, Jean. 1 second.
All right.
All right. They really like your New York Times bestseller, Year We Left Home. And the New York Times Notable Book Award, The Wide Blue Yonder. Her book has been published in the New Yorker, as well as dozens of other magazines, and anthologized in the Best American Short Stories and Pushcart Prize anthologies. She has been the recipient of the Guggenheim and the National Endowment for the Arts Fellowships, among other accolades, and she has taught creative writing at the University of Illinois, the Urbana Campaign, Reed College, Northwestern University, and many other colleges and universities. Dan Chaon's most recent book is Sleepwalk, which came out in 2022. He's the author of 6 previous books, including Ill Will, a national bestseller named one of the 10 best books of 2017 by Publishers Weekly. Other works include a short story collection, Stay Awake, a finalist for the Short Story Prize, and national bestseller, Await Your Reply, and Among the Missing, a finalist for the National Book Award. Chaon's fiction has appeared in the Best American Short Stories, the Pushcart Prize anthologies, and the O. Henry Collection. And he has been a finalist for the National Magazine Award in Fiction and Shirley Jackson Award. And he was the recipient of an Academy Award in Literature from the American Academy of the Arts and Letters. He lives in Cleveland. And Jean, you mentioned that you're in Illinois right now, right?
Urbana,
Illinois. There you go. There you are. So
home of the Big Ten. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Ryan. And before we do anything else, Dan and I have a friend who it's her birthday today, and that is our friend Rebecca Weber. So we have an actual piece of birthday cake for you, Rebecca. Wishing you all the best. I'm actually going to eat this later. Here's to you, and some balloons, which will scare my dog. So there you go. Yeah, she thinks these are pretty funky. Okay, so anyway, happy birthday to you. We're just so glad you're here.
Happy birthday, Rebecca.
Okay, yeah, and let me just say that how much I love my cover. And everybody at Algonquin knows this, but everybody else should too. My friend Roz, who's a painter, loves it. that's good enough for me. So I'm really pleased with it, and happy we're getting this show on the road. Take it, Dan.
Oh, well, I thought you were going to read for about 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to read just a little bit from the beginning, for about 5 minutes. I have a virtual drink here for it's delicious. Okay, well, this is just those of you that haven't had a chance to take a look or crack the book. Yes, it's a balloon. She hates balloons. But this is the very beginning. Looking for her place in the world. Right now she's working as a landscaper, and everybody says, "Oh, you're too good for that." And she's going, "Shut up, it's what I do." But she is going to a job at the home of the poet Viridian, who she doesn't really know that that's her pen name. She's introduced as quiet Mrs. Boone. So here I'm going to read two little sections. One is a description of Viridian, and then also a little action, a little scene after that. So this is Viridian, and Carla again is the narrator, and her boss's name is Rick. And Viridian is introduced as Mrs. Boone. That's her other name. The door opened and Mrs. Boone, I guessed it was her, stepped out onto the front porch. She had long gray and silver hair brushed straight back from her forehead and standing out like a lion's mane. She was barefoot. She wore loose white linen pants and a blue knee-length top with wide drooping sleeves. I saw older women wearing clothes like these in Marin, equal parts yoga practice and Star Wars costuming. I wondered how old she was, 60, 70. Then I found myself asking another question, whether she had been or was perhaps still beautiful. All this in a moment, only as long as it took Rick to say hello and tell her we had everything she'd ordered. "This is Carla. She'll be doing your work today." I don't remember Mrs. Boone saying much, hello probably, looking me over while I tried to appear obliging, capable, harmless. She had a wide forehead and her blue eyes were wide set also, and there was something about her eyebrows that made you think of birds, the wings of birds, although not until later when you tried to recall what in her face had struck you. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead just a little. Marin is Marin County in Northern California, where some of you live. And the book is in part my love letter to Northern California, a place I like a lot. Okay, so she has started her job. She hasn't finished it. She had to go home before she was finished. So she comes in early the next day, sneaking in to the yard to try and finish. So here she is. I started in and worked as fast as I could. In my mind, I was already done and on my way to Corte Madera, quiet, where Rick was probably even now using my name as a swear word. Then a man walked around the edge of the house the same way I'd come. He stopped short on seeing me, held up one finger of one hand, and I think the word I'm looking for is declaimed. I heard an old religious man just yesternight declare that he had found a text to prove that only God, my dear, could love you for yourself alone and not your yellow hair. He stopped and gave me an expectant look. I mean, WTF. My hair's not yellow, I said, just to be saying something. I'd left my hat in the truck. Mistake. He shrugged this off. It's close enough. He was about 50, I guessed, with a fleshy, sagging face, a high forehead, and long, droopy hair. He had one of those big chests and big bellies supported on skinny legs. I've had to deal with obnoxious men before, who hasn't? A couple of times on the job, and once I had to use an electric hedge clipper to get a guy to back off. I had to make up my mind about this character in the spaces between words, since there were at least a couple of ways things could go wrong. Just to buy more time, I said, "Are you Mr. Boone?" He seemed to think this was funny. "Ha! No such person." He wore long, baggy shorts, a black t-shirt, and rope sandals. In Marin, you could never tell if people were bums or billionaires. But you live here, I said, since it was easiest to keep talking with Mrs. Boone. Is that what she's calling herself now? I'm in residence. Is Viridian up yet? Who? Viridian, like the pigment. I expect I had the same suspicious look on my face. It's a color, he told me. Green. We were back to colors now. I just got here, I said. I haven't seen anybody. I started in digging again. I wasn't afraid of him by then, but a planting spade is a good thing to have in your hands, just in case. You're the gardener, huh? I work for a landscaping company. That must be great. It's the closest you could come to being a plant yourself. I looked up to see if he was making fun of me, but he had such a blissed out, pleased expression on his face. And I remembered my mom saying, you could never tell when somebody might be a little bit off, a little simple-minded, and you should treat them charitably. You mind if I do my exercises here? I won't get in your way. Go right ahead. I was all right as long as it wasn't naked yoga or something like that. I kept digging and didn't look up. Whatever kind of exercise it was, it involved a lot of loud breathing and grunting, a lot of bending himself double and reaching this way and that. This went on for a while. Then he stopped and clutched his knees and puffed out his cheeks. His face was bright pink. He didn't seem to be in very good shape. When he caught his breath again, he said, "So how do you like California?" Fine, I guess. I find it takes some getting used to. I mean, it's like walking around inside a giant piece of fruit, isn't it? Yeah, whatever. I wouldn't know, I said. I haven't lived anywhere else. A California native. Wow, I didn't think there were any of those. We were hunted almost to extinction for our pelts, but we're making a comeback. I thought I'd stepped in it and was going to get myself run off the place, but after a moment he started laughing, or wheezing was more like it. Anyway, he wasn't mad. And if I could get these last few plants in the ground watered up and covered over, I could make a break for it. Then I heard him say, "Verdi, look what I found in your garden." Mrs. Boone was standing in the breezeway looking through an open window at us. She came out through the screen porch holding a coffee mug. The man said, "Look at her. She's perfect. She's like something out of a Thomas Hart Benton mural." To me, Mrs. Boone said, "Is he distressing you?" I shook my head. I didn't trust myself to give any other answer. "Oscar," Mrs. Boone said to the man, "will you go get something from the house for me?" "Sure." He braced himself again on his skinny knees and stood up straight. "What do you need?" "Anything that's going to take you a long time to find." Okay, I'll stop there. But that's our introduction to Carla and Oscar, who is going to be an important character, and Viridian, or Mrs. Boone, who's a kind of a goddess-like poet, I suppose, a cult figure. So
I was hoping that we could just start with the gossip of like who all these poets are based on. You know a lot of poets, so
I do, but my conscience is clear because they're really, honestly, I made everybody up. There are a few little ticks and foibles and anecdotes and behaviors that I have borrowed from life, but no poets were harmed in the creation of this book.
Well, one of the things that was interesting to me, and I was surprised that because there is poetry in here, and you wrote it yourself.
I did.
And I mean, it's convincing. It's convincing. Was it hard?
Oh, miserable. And if anybody said, "Thompson, you suck as a poet," I would not argue with them one bit. I'd be okay with that assessment.
But what were you when you were starting to write the poetry? Were you like cribbing from a particular person? Were you?
I was, well, just a minute. Hey, you. She really does not like the balloon. Sorry. No, I guess I was mostly just trying to get away with it, to have it be credible. And I haven't written poetry since I was, like a college student, and I always think I could write a poem. How hard is it? Until I hear actual poets talk about their process and
Right.
how complicated it can be and what they're really aiming for. That it's not like writing a greeting card. And the other thing that's hard for me writing poetry is I inevitably I make it narrative.
Right.
I always want it to be prosy or to tell a story. And I did hear a poet I respect once say, "We are all narrative poets striving towards the lyrical," which I think is really interesting. So what I was trying to do, I guess, was give maybe a distillation of personality. Like, who is this person, Viridian? What kind of poetry would she write or might she have written? Same for Oscar,
Right.
same for Mathias. Just trying to basically make the poetry a distillation of personality, of character.
Yeah. Are there contemporary poets that you read?
Ooh, I probably read older poets. Well, I mean, I read
More
a lot
than
of
more
Yeats.
than
Yeah, I read a lot of Yeats, as you can tell. And I used to. I mean, we all bump into poets here and there, and I used to read.
we all do.
Well, we just they're just everywhere. They're just underfoot, kind of. I should have prepared. Come back to me later with that question.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I know.
I'll try and think
Those
of
kind of
somebody.
questions just frees you up. Well,
They do.
one of the other things that I was thinking about is this is it's not the first time you've set something in Northern California, but
That's right.
I mean you're kind of known as somebody who is like a Midwestern writer, or you tend to write about the Midwest more. But one of the things that I think is important about the Northern California setting is that it really enhances the issue of social class. I think more than Urbana would.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
We're all
Marin,
schlumps
I
here.
mean, the differences in people's level of wealth and their level of sort of seclusion is very different, I think.
Right.
Especially in that part of the world. And I wondered if you would talk a little bit about how social class has played a part in your work and what draws you to it, because I feel like that's a big part of this book.
Yeah. Well, there is this question in the book of how the poets earn a living or fail to earn a living,
Right.
and on how they maintain a little bit of a pleasant lifestyle, let's say. And I did kind of try and delve into that a little bit with Oscar, who's always going from one temporary teaching job to another, getting a fellowship here, a prize there, going to a conference, and really kind of patching together a living. Social class in general, I think you just have to be a good observer or try to be, and realize that not everybody is coming at you from the same background, that or the same assumptions. I think that's just part of a writer's toolkit in terms of observation and curiosity. Who came from where and what assumptions do they have, and how does that build on them? And I'm glad you said that, because I'd kind of hate to be a writer who never got out of their own comfort zone.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also a good way to sort of introduce this world from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it gives you this way to, Carla has not gone to, or she went to junior college briefly, but she's not gone to college. She's never been a literary person. And so all of this stuff, including, literary magazines and so on and so forth, are completely foreign to her. And I mean, it's a little bit like she's been dropped into another planet.
Yeah, well, and I wanted that. I wanted this world to be interpreted to the reader, because how many of us really hang out with literary magazine staffs?
No.
Hi, Jody. Sorry, didn't mean to. I know you do that every day of your life. But anyway, I wanted someone outside of this world to look at it and go, what's going on with these people? What? That not to have any preconceptions. Unlike when she goes to an actual poetry reading and there's a kid who's studied poetry in college and he's very intense about it and has opinions and is easily exasperated, by her viewpoint. So I guess I wanted her to be, like the naturalist, let loose in the jungle.
Right.
Of poets, and there's all sorts of poets too. They're not confined to my little zoo of types that I put together. I mean, some, you can't really tell when you're in the grocery who might be the poet. You just can't.
Yes.
It could be the kid behind the register for all you know.
Well, that's probably true.
Come on.
When one thing that I was people in this book do teach, but it's not an academic novel, right? I mean, that's not the setting. I mean, and that seems to be something you've kind of studiously avoided in your career.
God, why would I want to write about it? I spent most of my life doing it.
Right, but I mean, it seems like everybody, like a lot of people eventually sort of give in, maybe out of just sheer vengefulness.
Well, there might come a time. Rick Russo has that great novel Straight Man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could only write it as a comedy, I suppose. But I do remember a man I taught with for a long time saying about some situation that was going on in the anguish department, there's not an ounce of material in this for any of us.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, it does. I feel like it does sort of make the poets even more rarefied in some ways to place them outside of academe. Yeah. So could we talk about like where the beginning sparks of this book came from?
If I can remember, we can talk.
Yeah,
about
I know.
It.
I mean, all of that stuff is probably an invention, and it changes every time you say it. But it's always interesting to hear what at the moment.
What I would say at this point in time. Well, I guess having written all my adult life, I found myself with some opinions and observations about it, and although these are all poets. Why did I make them poets instead of fiction writers, which I am? A couple of reasons. One, it was easier for me to be a little bit more objective. These aren't, any. Their process is different than mine, and also, I kind of venerate poetry. I do. I think it is a lot more art for art's sake. I can remember riding around in a cab or something with one poet and several fiction writers, and the poet getting out after listening to our conversation and going, I thought to myself, these are people that could actually sell a lot of books. Wow. And poets are more like, God, I will offend them with every word I say, but they're not exactly cloistered, but they're like the high priests of literature, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Well, I mean, on the back it says, it's the story of a young woman who gets swept up in the dramatic and passionate world of writers. And I feel like poets are much more dramatic and passionate than fiction. I mean, I can't really describe myself as dramatic and passionate.
Oh, come on.
I mean,
you should work on that.
I should. I just, there's too many words to be written to be dramatic.
Yeah. Well, poets can be brilliant in fits and starts. Fiction writers have to pretty much, put in the miles.
Right. I mean, if you're a poet, you wake up, you write a few lines, then you go have sex, do yoga. I mean, you have the whole day in front of you. And
Is it too late to be a poet? Yeah.
If you're writing fiction, it's just, like
It's walk the dog, write, try and write 10 pages,
Right,
walk the
right,
dog
right.
again. Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, you sort of started with wanting to write about writing, and did Carla herself come first, or did Viridian?
Good question. I think Viridian probably did. I noticed on a Goodreads page, somebody had asked a question darkly, this seems to be based on Elsa, whoever she was, and her Druid Hill community. True?
Oh my God.
I'm going, what? What? No. No. There were really only general models, I suppose, for any of this. But I think I wanted this kind of remote, somewhat mysterious, very charismatic, as I said, kind of goddess-like. She's beautiful, and that beauty is both a blessing and a curse to her in her career, because she's the real thing. And I had the idea of a community that formed around her, and that is protective of her, and that's inspired by her. And really, I love the idea of the poet's house is a haven where you could be a writer, but a different haven is as opposed to, say, a writers' conference,
Right.
a different kind of gathering. Shall we talk about writers' conferences? Now, Dan and I have been to a conference together, and I think the most louche thing that happened is people went to a karaoke bar. But
Right.
I wasn't everywhere, so I can't.
Well, I always assume
can't
that the bad kids are elsewhere doing their crazy things. Whereas I'm just in my hotel room reading a manuscript again.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's always the preparation and stuff.
Well, there have been those times and those places, though, where we all had more fun, or tried to, or even if no one is being naughty, what did they used to call bread loaf, bed loaf, even if nobody is
Right.
even if nobody is doing that sort of thing, there's something about all those egos turned loose,
Yes.
and given permission to inhabit your writing self, because most of it we it's like the grocery. I don't have paparazzi coming up and saying, is that really you? People don't do that. Writers in our culture are blessedly invisible, pretty much. But if you get to a writers conference where everyone's kind of looking around going, puffing their chest out, and they're free to strut their credentials, and maybe inhabit that side of their persona. I think that's where a lot of the silliness and the competition and the angst comes from. And so I have 3 chapters in this book that are a writers' conference,
Right.
and had really a lot of fun, with them. And I'm not sure anything that I put into my chapters really happened, except there was one woman. She was a conferee. She wasn't a staff person, who would come and eat all the bagels.
I mean, it's free.
You want some more?
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta get the free stuff when you can. So there's like a kind of a mystery at the heart of this book. And without giving too much away, could you talk a little bit about the romance between Mathias and Viridian, and how that how that plays out in the book?
Well, Viridian, who is older, has a storied past, and a storied present, I think. But she was the lover of a famous dramatic suicidal, finally did kill himself, poet who, kind of embodies all the worst things that you can think of about a poet's personality, the extremism and the cruelty and the overindulgence. And so she's always been, to some extent, in his shadow. And that persists even after his death. And there's, I mean, you're right not to get into it, Dan, but it's plot. Plot is always a contrivance. So there's there's a mystery as to what happened to those poems, that he wrote and then burned theatrically. And so there's some mystery that I've put together about that, and that kind of makes the plot chug along, But,
right. I mean, it's also, I think, a really mordant commentary on, the issue of being a woman writer, and, the kind of ways in which, women are often overshadowed and ignored, or become treated as an appendage of,
or
a great man.
You can be
Right.
amused, yes.
Right. I guess that's all that needs to be said about that. But I feel like it's it's a big part of the emotion of this book. And Carla is also getting pressured in various ways to sort of follow a role and become a certain kind of person. And that, that pressure that I think is a particular pressure for women now. I mean, in Viridian's generation, but also now, I think is a big thematic part of the book, and I love that. Are there any good stories that you have that sort of relate to that?
Oh, about being pressured one way or the other, or identity, or well, I would say I've certainly been patronized.
Well, right, yeah.
I mean, maybe we all have. I mean, maybe men are too. But oh, isn't that sweet that you want to write some stories?
Right,
and,
right.
I guess I was thinking of this just the other day. No names involved, but a teacher who mortally offended a friend of mine by saying, "Well, you're just a little," in a writing class, "You're just a little girl from the suburbs. What do you know?" Well, she wasn't from the suburbs. She knew a lot of things, and she made his class a wasteland in retaliation. So I think women can get the expectation, or the assumption from some quarters, at least, that you're not serious, that or that there's something kind of comical, or I don't know, something dilettantish, you're one of those scribbling women, or you can afford to do this, you don't really have to earn a living.
Right.
Yeah, you do. We all do. We have.
We should probably turn it over to questions.
To Ryan. Let's.
Yeah.
But just I did have one other thing, which was just about no, it just fell out of my head.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, thank God.
We can do a question and then you can think on it and interrupt.
Okay, yeah.
The next one. So if anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat, or you can private message it to me. I would love to just do a question from me first to get people thinking. I'm curious as to what the characters that identify themselves as poets throughout the novel, what are their, how did you come to subvert some of the stereotypes of the poet as to not write a bunch of the same poetry characters. That's like the turtleneck wearing.
Oh, well,
Pretentious.
what are the stereotypes?
Oh my
When you
gosh,
think
so many.
of stereotypical poets, what comes to mind to you, Ryan?
Oh, I don't. I mean, I went to. I'm in poetry school right now, so I could just name my
Okay.
friend. But
You
like,
should be taking notes.
yeah, I should be. I know. Just the turtlenecks and the pomp and
Oh,
circumstance and well read. I guess I'm just what interested me enough about when I was reading this was the like you nailed all the sort of subcultures of like tiny little. It does feel a little bit like a cult sometimes when you're following a certain school of poets or a certain
yeah.
thesis advisor.
Yeah.
So I was curious as to, and you mentioned that this was all sort of like you took some specific details
Chicks and
from real life,
foibles.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But it wasn't that. So how did you kind of create these characters? How were
Well, I suppose I started with the idea of types, although there may be different types than we're more familiar with, but and then tried to individualize them, like
Yeah.
Viridian, the kind of almost otherworldly, revered figure. I had a lot of fun with Oscar, who is, wild and crazy, eccentric, kind of hard on his sleeve, always over dramatic, always just too full of himself, but for whom I have a lot of affection. And then there's a kind of a minor character who's rather unlikable, but I like her anyway. Who she's Barb, who is a striver. She wants really bad to be a poet, and she knows she's not that good at it yet, and she's kind of bitter and protective and a little sharp edged. What's the line? Once Barb decided to get on your nerves, she pretty much stayed there. But she's the one I put into her mouth a lot of things about POBIZ, about, yes, you have to keep doing it even though there's no reward, and all you're going to do is get 3 copies of a literary magazine that they'll sell at a book fair, and then you get to go home and do it all over again. And I had fun with, when you get to the conference there, then we do get into more caricatures. There's the, I forget if I made him a poet or a fiction writer, but the guy who says, for my workshop, we'll have 3 hours of meditation, so he's not really doing his job, or we'll stand up at I'm going to draw a cross on the blackboard and stand in front of it, and then I'm going to play my harmonica, and then I want you to write about it. And people are going, what? And people who have their own, kind of turf, like the Puerto Rican diaspora, sure, nothing wrong with that. Or that are very into identity or one thing or another. Then I think there is more caricature, and then I think I did probably make more of a distinction between the older poets that Carla's come to know and this young new generation that are all hyphenated, bisexual, whatever. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, but
it probably gets me in big trouble.
That's okay. I am a hyphenated bisexual, so whatever. That's totally fine.
Well,
There
and
you
good for you.
Does anyone else have a sort of question that they would like to raise? Don't be shy. I can also unmute you if you'd rather speak it.
I remembered my question, Gene.
Yeah, let's go. That sounds great.
Which is this your funniest book, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've written stories that are funny.
Yes,
but,
I agree.
This does have comedy in it because if I said I was going to write a book about poets and poetry and made it all and it's going to be deadly serious, I mean, we'd all probably slit our wrists halfway through. So I wanted there to be comedy in it, and I have a lot of fun with some of these kind of satellite characters. You know, the
Mhm.
the guy that runs the magazine and is very careerist and ambitious and a little bit smarmy. So
I don't know
yeah, I,
anybody
I
like
think I think it is. I think it is. And you know, the easiest way to work with Carla, and I'll talk a little bit about Carla if nobody has any questions, is to see the comedy. I mean, she does suffer and she does have some life decisions to make, but you know, I like her a lot. I hope the reader does too. I mean, she's a smart ass for
that.
one
Mhm.
thing. You know, she's always getting into trouble for mouthing off.
Mm.
But that's a kind of a defense for her because she isn't very sure of herself. And she's certainly not sure of herself in this world. One thing, if you've looked at the book at all, you would know this from the beginning, but Carla has like a learning difference, and it's very difficult for her to read words on a page. You know, she can do it, but she fights it. And the way she really gets into poetry is by going to a reading, and the words come at her in a way that is not filtered by that brain, you know, tick that she has. And so, and I think that's one of the reasons that she is self-conscious, and one of the reasons that she kind of downplays herself and, you know, doesn't dare to be ambitious is because she's been told she's a failure in this, you know, one important way. And the fact that she comes around to working, you know, doing a workaround basically. You know, if she hears words spoken, wow, they really connect. You know, words on a page are a fight for her. Huh. So
What do you think draws Viridian to Carla?
a lot is made of that kind of towards the end. You know, why should
Yeah.
Viridian confide in her? Because she sees a young person who's striving, I think, and who needs some guidance, you know, and also someone that she can, you know, I mean, I think if you're older, you do start feeling this way about younger people in your life. You know, you can you can carry on some things that I wish I had done. You know, you can still act, you can still be, you can still decide. You know, I mean, I'm all washed up, you know, but you know, you're young, you have potential. And also Carla is one of the acolytes in this world. I mean, she's very useful. You know, she
Yeah.
comes and takes care of the gardens, you know, and fetches and carries. And Viridian is a little bit of a user, I think, in
Right.
that respect. You know, she does. You know, people are happy to help her, and she's all too happy to
Be helped.
No, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I-
Well, yeah, I mean, as a teacher, you have a lot of students who completely love you, and you know you've been a mentor for many years. I mean, you have to admit we've got like
Yeah.
a trail of acolytes behind you, and I know many still we just can't say enough about how great you are.
Well, then there are those others, but
Well,
okay.
I haven't
we-
met
yeah.
those. I don't.
We have
I don't-
students actually
I-
asking questions to me right now in their private messaging me chat.
Okay.
So
Okay, go for it.
one of your students says, or I think one of your students says, you're
Who
a
is it?
legendary writing teacher. How did your teaching interact with your own work? Did it enhance it in any way, or did all those pesky students just get in the way?
Is this somebody I know?
I don't know. Should I reveal the identity? I don't know.
Please.
They said kidding. It was Julia Keller.
Oh, Julia, she's not my student. She's we worship Julia. You know, but does sometimes, you know, okay, there's a on the one hand, and then there's on the other hand. I think teaching writing can feed, you know, your process, you know, because you're trying to articulate some things that maybe are happening in your own work, and or students are you know, asking questions that make you think about these things. It's not true that we steal their ideas, you know, once in a while. But so there is that sense that you're doing something in your work hours that are not, I mean, they're attuned to what you're doing, and that is that can feed you. On the other hand, there's drudgery. There's like, how many pages do I have to read before tomorrow? And annotate and have something intelligent to say about it when it's really not very good. I mean, there's just the drudgery that of any job, that when you're thinking, I could be doing something else. But there's a lot of talent in the world. And when I was teaching, even just teaching undergrads, you could be floored by just absolutely unschooled talent, bushels of it. And that's a hopeful thing. I think that's helpful.
I love that.
Yeah. Who were your mentors, Jean?
Well, it's kind of sad because they're all dying off,
Yeah.
like literally, recently. When I was an undergrad right here at Illinois, I worked with Mark Costello, who he probably said the most important thing to me ever. I was such a little hot dog that I'd written a story before class started, and I gave, here's my story. And he came in the next day and said, just very casually, "Oh, Jean, I read your story. I liked it." And I'm going, yeah. People like Mike Van Walligan, who was a poet who died very recently, was a wonderful teacher of short fiction. I remember, in my brain, there's a tape of things he used to say. I went to grad school. Philip O'Connor also passed away, who was just a force of nature. I mean, it's just hard to believe he's dead. So those were people I worked with, if that answers your question. None of whom were women, because guess what? We didn't have any women writing teachers. I was the first such creature at Illinois when I was hired in 1973 or something like that. And nobody thought that was unusual, that there were, just all these guys teaching writing.
Right.
Now we're, the pendulum has gone back and forth and back and forth. But I had no women mentors,
We have, speaking of writing teachers, I know that there's in a lot of the writing classes, we talk about killing darlings. And one of the people in the chat, Wendy, asked a question. Can you share with us a darling you were forced to kill in this book?
Oh, well,
great question.
I don't know about this book, but the one I just finished, I had this whole, it's going to sound like an homage to Dan Chaon, but I had this kind of futuristic thing going on where the world had changed and everything was kind of very off balance and off kilter. And my agent read the manuscript and said, "Jean, Jean, this is not your gift." So, okay, so I took it all out. But once in a while, and I was so fond of it. I can't think of anything here that there might have been maybe a little bit of maybe more of a tour of the Bay Area. Maybe there was a little bit more scenic wonder or something that I had to sacrifice.
Yeah, if Victor Hugo can talk about the sewers for, I don't know, 5 chapters, you're allowed to talk about the Bay Area, I guess. But I understand that.
and I thank my friends who still live there, who I went to for advice, saying, does this plant grow, there? Because I don't know. I mean, I needed some guidance.
We have a question from Sarah Bandy that says, if poets are high priestesses, what drives them?
Ooh, what does? That's a very Zen question, isn't it? And I'm not sure I know the answer. Let's all think. Well, I I suppose the thing that drives any writer, to try and make words ignite, and make words connect in the way that will expand your world and hopefully somebody else's.
Mm.
I can't be much or any more articulate than that, really. Sorry.
No,
If I knew I could write poetry.
Well, now I'm curious about that. With, like, you mentioned that you used to write poetry in college, and then you're writing poetry as a character. I always find, like, how did it come easier when you're going through this character lens, this brain of a character?
Well, yes and no, because when I was a sophomore writing sophomoric poetry, I thought it was all great, because you don't have any schooling or understanding of what you're trying to do, and this, I was just mortally self-conscious and ooh, I'm going to put a foot wrong here. And so far, I've got to say I've gotten away with it, although I'm waiting for my comeuppance, So, but no, it was easier when I was younger because I don't know what I was, why not? Why not do this, that, or the other? And I was one of those little kids that wrote stuff when I was in the third grade. Like a bunny is funny. So, it was praised. I have to tell you, so, it set me on my path. Do we have any more questions, or could
Let's
we?
see. We have I'll answer a couple more. Oh, it looks like we have one earlier that I forgot. What did you say? What do you think comes first with this project in general? Did you think it was the plot or the characters that came first for this sort of this generation?
Probably the thought. Probably the thought. Yeah. Just the idea of I want to write something about writing, and I'm going to focus it on a community of writers. With maybe one important figure, but the thought rather than rather than having a dream and being haunted by a figure or something that character. I wish that happened. It doesn't. Amazing.
Well, okay. I wish that happened too. Let's see.
Are you reading anything now that you're excited about, Jean?
I've had to reread books to be so that I can do interviews with people that want to know. And I just did a podcast, so I'm not reading anything now that's new, but I'm revisiting things like A Death in the Family by James A.G.
Yeah.
And Andrew Holleran's Dancer from the Dance. And Lawrence Durrell's Alexandria Quartet, and Dan's favorite, Thomas Tryon's The Other, which is a classic horror movie, and which horror movie? It's a movie, yeah, I guess, and also book, and was drawn to it always by how beautiful the language is and how pretty that setting is. You want to be in that apple orchard and under that grape arbor and drinking that lemonade, except for that evil twin.
Right.
I can look over here. There's a stack of books I want to get to. And one of these days I will. Yeah. Andrew Holleran has a new book out, The Kingdom of Sand. And the Andrew Holleran book, I mean, maybe that's an odd one for me to pick out. As a straight woman, it's about gay men in the late 70s, in between sexual liberation and AIDS and the life of pleasure seeking that they pursue. But it's one of those books that will just cast a spell on you in terms of language and style. And could I say just really quickly, I want to talk about style these days instead of voice, I'm so tired of people talking about voice, which seems so much more narcissistic, and style is something that you can maybe extrapolate and set aside and identify. Voice is just I'm boohooing in the wilderness, or I mean, I don't mean that entirely, but I get tired of voice. Sorry, everybody. Voice. You're probably tired of mine by now.
Oh no.
Okay, she said, segueing into, okay.
While we are not tired of your voice, we do unfortunately
we do have other things to do.
No. Oh my goodness. We are unfortunately wrapping up. So thank you so much, Jean and Dan, for coming out on our digital Zoomscape today, and thank you so much everyone else for joining us. You can get both. You can get The Poet's House and Sleepwalk, which is Dan's newest book, both at McNally Jackson on the website. I put the links in the chat. And thank you all so much. Hope you have a
Thank you,
good
Ryan,
night.
and thank you, Dan. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody who came in. Thank you.
Thanks, James. All right.
Okay, adios.